They fired me in front of the entire company like I was a criminal, but I wasn't the one stealing from the business. They were. Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and don't forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved one. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and overpolished furniture. Frosted glass panels let in muted sunlight, casting a sterile glow across the dozen or so employees seated around the long oak table. I was at the far end, flipping through the notes for our quarterly update, the kind of thing no one really listened to. The CEO stood near the screen, arms folded, lips pressed tight. Something was off. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by the expression you see on surgeons before they cut. His voice sliced through the room. "Before we begin," he said, "we need to address a serious matter." Chairs creaked. Phones were silently flipped face down. I straightened, puzzled, glancing around. My eyes met my manager's. He looked away. "Effective immediately," the CEO continued. "Jacob Miles is terminated for gross misconduct, including unauthorized financial activity." My name hit like a punch. The air left the room. Heads turned. I froze. Was this a joke? "We have irrefutable evidence," he said, voice cold. "Details will not be disclosed to protect the integrity of internal investigations." A silent beat passed. Then 2 security guards entered from the back, unannounced, deliberate, already moving toward me. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. My hands shook as one of the guards held out a canvas pouch for my badge. I glanced around the table. People I mentored, late nights spent debugging their code, weekends covering their shifts. No one said anything. Not Mark, who once called me his tech whisperer. Not Elise, who I'd trained during her first nerve-wracked week. Even Carla, who'd cried on my shoulder during her divorce, just looked down at her notepad. The CEO didn't even look at me anymore. He clicked a button. The screen behind him lit up with the next slide like none of this just happened. I stood there, invisible, humiliated, exiled while still in the room. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know I'd noticed the irregular access logs 6 weeks ago, or that I'd started quietly logging every unauthorized login under my credentials. They didn't know about the spreadsheet I kept, hidden, encrypted, detailing every shady transaction that passed through my name. They didn't know that I'd seen their setup coming. So I didn't protest. I didn't raise my voice or plead. I handed over my badge. I walked out on my own. And as I passed the screen, where revenue charts now glowed behind the man who destroyed me, I whispered just loud enough for him to hear. "You should have been more careful." Then I smiled. Just once. Because I wasn't the one who should have been scared. They were. I didn't wait for him to react. My words hung in the air, soft enough to be missed by the others, sharp enough to slice straight through him. I turned, not in a rush, but deliberately, each step measured like I was the one in control now. The room hadn't moved. Everyone stayed rooted, like statues bolted to their chairs. Some stared at the screen. Others looked anywhere but at me. Nobody breathed. Nobody blinked. As I approached the doors, I heard the CEO's voice crack for the first time since the ambush began. "Escort him off the premises." Not an order, almost a flinch. The guards followed behind, but I didn't speed up. I wasn't going to give them the image they wanted, me stumbling out, embarrassed, ashamed. That wasn't the ending I'd chosen. The corridor outside was glossy, sterile, and far too quiet. Glass walls lined both sides, offering a perfect view into the smaller breakout rooms. A few heads popped up from laptops. Whispers started. My badge didn't work anymore. One of the guards tapped their access card to open the stairwell door, and I caught my reflection again in the steel panel beside it. I looked calm, almost detached, but inside something burned. Not rage, not fear, precision. This wasn't chaos. This was a test. Back in the conference room, the slide deck was probably on quarterly goals again, as if my public execution was just a brief intermission. I could picture Marcus leaning back in his chair, smug, maybe even satisfied. I wondered how long they'd been planning it. Weeks? Months? Long enough to think they'd get away with it. The elevator dinged, but I didn't get in. Instead, I turned down the back stairwell. I didn't want cameras watching me right now. I wanted silence. Each step down echoed, not with defeat, but with a promise. I wasn't walking away from anything. I was walking toward something they hadn't calculated. I reached the side exit, where cold air hit my face like a slap. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably someone pretending to be surprised. I didn't look at it. I just stood on the curb outside the building, staring back at the mirrored facade of the company I'd given 6 years to. 6 years of 4 a.m. deployments, of late nights fixing their mistakes, of skipping holidays to save their launches. And this was how they repaid me? No, this was how they exposed themselves, because I'd already started laying the groundwork. The moment things started smelling wrong in the system log, I began copying, backing up, tracking access points, installing watchers they didn't know existed. They fired me for crimes I didn't commit. But they made one mistake. They thought I wouldn't fight back. And now, I had nothing left to lose. I didn't go home right away. I needed time, space, somewhere no one would look. An old co-working space across town still had my access code. It was quiet, anonymous, and more importantly off the radar. I slid my laptop from its case, booted it up, and began digging. The server logs didn't lie. There it was, an access timestamp logged at 2:14 a.m. through my credentials. I was nowhere near the building that night. I cross-referenced the access trail. It originated from a terminal near the executive floor, one I had never used. Something was off about the entire chain. The entries were too clean, as if someone had gone out of their way to leave nothing, except the exact trail needed to burn me. One name came to mind, Marcus. He'd always hovered near the top, never quite leadership, always pretending he didn't care about titles. But lately, he'd been different. Cozy lunches with the CEO, long meetings with the board that didn't appear on the shared calendar. I checked the security cam index for the night of the breach. Most footage was restricted, but I still had an old link, backdoor access I created during a forgotten audit 6 months ago. One camera overlooking the 14th floor server room still had an open stream archive. I played it back minute by minute. At 2:10 a.m., the elevator opened. Marcus stepped out. Alone. He paused at the end of the hallway, looked around, then pulled out a badge. Not his usual one. This one had a red band across the bottom, executive level. He swiped into the restricted corridor. I leaned back, heart pounding. It was him. I picked up the phone and called the one person I knew wouldn't hang up. Liam, our network analyst, the only person who ever really listened when I raised red flags. Meet me, I said. Somewhere private. 20 minutes later, we were parked near the docks. He looked tired, wired, and furious. I knew they were framing you, he said without greeting. I found shell activity tied to your login. It wasn't random. They used a clone session. Only a few people could have pulled that off. His eyes met mine. They wanted you gone. Why? I asked. He hesitated. Then he said the one name I wasn't ready to hear. Ava. I stared at him. She accessed your office the night before everything went down. Her credentials show up 5 separate times. You weren't there. My chest tightened. Ava, the one person I thought saw me for who I really was, had the key to my space. She laughed at my dumb jokes. She stood by my desk during the worst shifts. And she helped destroy me. Whatever this was, it wasn't just professional. It was orchestrated. And now I had my suspects. I didn't scream. I didn't beg for answers. I didn't even text Ava. Instead, I disappeared. Not literally. I still existed online, still answered the occasional message with a well-placed, "Thanks, I'll be okay." But inside, I'd gone dark. I played the part they assigned me, the disgraced employee licking his wounds, clumsily applying to second-rate tech startups, spamming out resumes no one answered. I changed my profile photos to grayscale, deleted my old posts, let people think I was spiraling. It kept them relaxed. While they moved on, I stayed busy. Every server log I'd copied, every data packet I'd sniffed, every keystroke they didn't know I'd captured, I pored over all of it line by line. Hidden in the metadata were conversations scrubbed from company archives. I reconstructed threads between Marcus and the CEO, coded phrases about flushing liability, references to off-ledger payments, and one line that stuck with me. He's clean on paper. That's what makes him useful. That was me. Useful. Disposable. I didn't rage. I built. In a rented storage unit on the edge of town, I set up a war room. Multiple monitors, isolated servers, air-gapped systems. I bought a burner laptop, installed nothing but Linux, and started working under a new identity. Caleb Wright. He didn't exist on paper, but he would soon own a company. Using a fake incorporation service offshore, I created Iron Shore Solutions, a boutique cybersecurity vendor. Sleek website, fabricated portfolio, false endorsements from manufactured clients. The branding was sharp, believable, designed to impress the very people who threw me away. Then I baited the hook. Ava had once mentioned the company was behind on an upcoming compliance audit. I knew the deadline. I also knew the kinds of firms they liked to contract last minute. Agile, cheap, obscure enough to fly under legal radar. I reached out as Caleb, offering security patches, pre-written scripts for compliance automation, and most importantly, a platform for remote backend access. To them, it was a gift. They accepted. They never asked who was behind the keyboard. Suddenly, I had a front row seat to everything. Internal files, HR rosters, payrolls with ghost employees, meeting transcripts. And beneath it all, a financial substructure tied to vendors that didn't exist. Dummy transactions, disappearing funds. They weren't just unethical. They were laundering. And now they were doing it with my help. The irony tasted sweet. I didn't celebrate. Not yet. I just kept quiet, kept listening, kept siphoning. Storms don't start with thunder. They start with stillness. The contract came through faster than expected. Less than 48 hours after submitting the final proposal, Iron Shore Solutions, my fabricated firm, was approved for a 3-month consulting engagement. The irony didn't escape me. A company that branded itself on integrity had just handed the keys to their core systems to a man they'd publicly crucified. The onboarding was done through Marcus himself. He sent a brief message, curt, efficient, lacking any sign he recognized the name. "Welcome aboard. We need speed and discretion." Typical. The man wouldn't recognize a ticking bomb if it sat in his inbox with a blinking red light. From the outside, my company looked pristine. On the inside, every tool I offered came preloaded with flaws, intentional vulnerabilities stitched into the code like invisible rot. Nothing major at first, just enough to trigger subtle failures. File sync delays, system alerts that triggered too early or not at all, a few corrupted data packets in monthly reports. The brilliance was in the pacing. Too fast, and they'd get suspicious. Too slow, and they'd recover. I needed chaos to seep in quietly, like mold behind wallpaper, harmless until it spread too far to fix. Behind the scenes, I watched everything. Their security team flagged small discrepancies, but dismissed them as glitches. Meanwhile, I accessed logs no one knew I had touched. I mirrored internal communications, extracted executive messages, traced payout flows through their shell vendors. A second layer of falsified contracts tied to ghost firms confirmed what I already suspected. The top floor was laundering millions under the disguise of licensing deals. I started breaking things in ways that couldn't be traced. Their payroll system froze during a critical cycle. Dozens of employees didn't get paid on time. HR panicked. A scheduling tool went down for 4 hours, just long enough to derail a major client presentation. A critical compliance report disappeared mid-review, triggering a furious call from the board. And yet, none of it pointed back to Iron Shore. I used anonymizing scripts and rotating IP masks to leak internal chaos to a local financial journalist. She'd written about our company once, back when I still worked there. She was smart, relentless, and already sniffing around after a recent tip-off about off-book spending. I fed her exactly what she needed, just enough evidence to raise questions, not accusations. Each week, her byline moved closer to the truth. Stockholders began pressing for answers. Share value dipped. Whispered conversations about leadership failures started circulating among middle management. The CEO held a town hall to reassure everyone. His smile looked painted on, sweat shining beneath studio lights. And all the while, I kept planting. An app dependency was swapped for a corrupted version. One internal tool used for compliance flagged itself as unauthorized. Meeting transcripts were altered before being archived. No one noticed until it was too late. They were unraveling, but they didn't know it was by design. Every crash, every bug, every late report, it all looked like coincidence. Bad luck. Technical debt catching up. They had no idea their slow collapse was being orchestrated by the man they'd thrown away. And I wasn't finished yet. It started with a burner text. The number was unfamiliar, the message brief. "I need to talk." Privately. I knew who it was before I read her name. Melanie Carr, VP of Operations, one of the first to sign off on my termination. I remembered the way she stood next to the CEO during that meeting, arms folded, eyes locked on me without a hint of doubt. She hadn't flinched when they called me a thief. She hadn't spoken either. Just stood there, silent, watching me fall. Now she was reaching out. We met in a parking garage downtown, level 4, far from any camera. She wore a gray hoodie and sunglasses, as if we were spies from a bad movie. She looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders tense, voice low, like every sentence might be recorded. "I didn't know," she said. I didn't respond. "I swear, Jacob. I knew there was something shady happening, but I didn't know they'd pin it on you. Not until the day it happened." I still didn't speak. She looked away. "Marcus said you'd been sloppy, that you'd taken liberties with the budget." I believed him. But now, she hesitated. "Now I see the trail. The shell companies, the false invoices, and it's worse than I thought." Her hands shook slightly. I could tell she was unraveling. That's what fear does. It gnaws at the conscience. I said just enough to keep her talking. "Why come to me now?" She hesitated. Then she leaned in. "Because you're not the only one they've used. You're just the only one they sacrificed publicly. And I think I'm next." She pulled out a flash drive. "You want access to their private project server? This gets you in." I shouldn't even have a copy, but I kept one. "Insurance." I took it slowly. "Why trust me?" She looked right at me. "Because you're the only one who's already lost everything." That line stuck with me. It was true, in a way. But she didn't know what I'd rebuilt. Over the next few weeks, we kept in contact through encrypted apps. I made her feel safe. I let her confess. Every time she cracked a little more, I nodded, acted sympathetic, played the listener she needed. She didn't realize she was being recruited. With her access, I slipped deeper into the company's infrastructure. The private server was a fortress, air-gapped, encrypted, hidden behind layers of proxy domain. But Melanie had unknowingly handed me a master key. Inside, I found black budgets, files labeled with vague project names but tied to real money, transfers that didn't match any public initiative. One folder linked to a Cayman account under a shell firm registered to Marcus's brother. Another matched a transaction I'd been blamed for 6 months earlier. They weren't just hiding fraud. They were running a full operation. I never told Melanie what I found. Not all of it. I needed her useful, not scared off. So I kept feeding her just enough fear to keep her close, and enough comfort to keep her loyal. She thought she was switching sides, but I was just flipping her like a switch. And now, with her help, I had everything I needed to bury them. The moment I sent the first file, I knew the clock had started ticking. I packaged everything: transaction records, back-channel correspondence, forged contracts, even internal video recordings, into an anonymous digital envelope and sent it to the 3 places that mattered most: the SEC, the IRS, and a high-ranking contact at the state attorney's office. Each file was tagged with dates, names, and locations. No commentary, just evidence. The truth didn't need narration. By the end of the week, the cracks turned into rupture. It started with the flagship app crashing during a live demo with a new investor group. A small glitch, nothing devastating, but enough to raise eyebrows. The week after, 2 internal documents appeared online, leaked to a growing subreddit that had started tracking tech company scandals. The files revealed inflated revenue claim. A journalist latched onto it. Then another. Then came the tweets. Internally, the company descended into chaos. One engineer resigned publicly, citing toxic silence at the top. 3 department heads were let go with vague press statements. No one knew who was safe anymore. Melanie, now deep in my pocket, sent me screenshots of internal chats. The paranoia was visible in every sentence. Employees accused each other of being moles. Every laptop was audited. Every conversation monitored, but they were looking in the wrong direction. The real attack wasn't coming from within their walls. It was coming from nowhere. They couldn't trace the leaks, couldn't stop the bugs, couldn't figure out why their systems were misfiring or why vendors were suddenly pulling out. Everything I'd planted weeks ago was finally blooming. Delayed scripts kicked in, backups failed silently, servers timed out at just the right moments. It wasn't enough to destroy the company overnight, but it was enough to make everyone question who was steering the ship. The CEO, once smug and composed, started unraveling. He scheduled emergency meetings almost daily. Staff were summoned at odd hours. He screamed in closed-door sessions. Rumors swirled that he'd hired a private security firm to trace the source of the breaches, but no results surfaced. His frustration became desperation. He needed a target, someone to pin it all on. But I wasn't there anymore. I wasn't anywhere. Iron Shore's digital presence was clean. The fake founder's social profile was updated, professional, and entirely fabricated. The servers I used rotated across VPN. My personal devices were encrypted and isolated. There were no handprints, just shadows. They couldn't fire me this time. They couldn't even find me. And while they scrambled to hold on to what was left, I watched. Not out of satisfaction, not even revenge. I watched to ensure they felt the one thing they'd never expected: helplessness. The article dropped on a Tuesday morning. No teaser, no warning, just a headline, bold and brutal, plastered across the homepage of a national outlet. Tech giant launders millions, whistleblower's identity unknown. Below it, the journalist's name, Sabrina Knox. Her reputation for dragging buried secrets into daylight was well earned. She'd spent weeks piecing together the fragments I'd fed her. Now, it all hit the public like a detonation. The report was meticulous. Shell companies linked to executive relative, inflated invoices, offshore transfers routed through dummy vendors, hidden transactions that funneled millions from investor funds to accounts tied to shadow entities. It read like a thriller, except the villains weren't imagined. They were real. By noon, the company's stock had plummeted 15%. Analysts scrambled to rewrite projections. Comment sections erupted. Subreddits lit up with timelines, conspiracy maps, whistleblower theories. Employees posted cryptic messages, hinting they'd seen warning signs for months. One tweet from a mid-level engineer went viral. We knew something was rotten. Now the whole building's collapsing. The company released a statement calling the allegations inaccurate and defamatory. But it was too late. The damage wasn't just financial, it was cultural. News vans lined up outside headquarters. Cameras rolled as staff left the building, boxes in hand, refusing to answer questions. Internally, teams fractured. Some demanded accountability. Others fled entirely. Slack channels were locked. Email servers slowed to a crawl under the flood. The CEO scheduled a live interview that evening with a major news network. He appeared calm, almost rehearsed, dressed in a navy suit with a forced smile. The host wasted no time. Did you know about the shell accounts? He blinked. There are no shell accounts. She tilted her head. Then how do you explain this wire transfer? She held up a printed document, one I had passed along just days before. His jaw tensed. That's fabricated. She didn't blink. It came from your internal servers. It's signed with your digital key. He faltered. Just a beat. But the world saw it. That was all it took. Clips spread within minutes. Hashtags trended. Commentators picked apart his body language, his shifting tone, the way he reached for his water too often. No amount of PR could fix what the public now believed. He was lying. Behind the scenes, Sabrina contacted me through our secure channel. They want to hear from the whistleblower. Anonymous. Audio only. You in? I considered it. Then I agreed. The next morning, they aired the interview. Distorted voice. Masked IP. No camera. Why did you do it? The host asked. I paused. Because they stole more than money, I answered. They stole trust. And no one steals that and walks away clean. Is that everything? Not yet. That's all I gave them. Just enough. The network kept the audio running over shots of empty offices, discarded company swag, and employees silently protesting outside their now tainted headquarters. I wasn't done. I'd only opened the first drawer. There were still folders buried deep. Still names no one had said out loud. Still crimes dressed up as strategy. And when I revealed the rest, I wouldn't be anonymous anymore. The encrypted file was sent at exactly 8 a.m. Time to land in each board member's inbox just before their scheduled quarterly meeting. The message was simple. If you want to save yourselves, open this. Now. Inside the file was everything. Not summaries. Not theories. Proof. Real financial spreadsheets mapping out the money trail. Email threads detailing how Marcus and the CEO coordinated payment to offshore vendors through Ava's signed approvals. Surveillance footage stitched together in a clean timeline. Recordings, time-stamped and layered, of executive conversations where my name was mentioned as the ideal fall guy. And at the center of it all, a memo. One they never meant to preserve, an internal draft titled, Damage Control Protocol, JM. JM. Jacob Miles. My name was the title of their cover-up strategy. I watched from a safe distance as news of the emergency board meeting broke. No press. No fanfare. Just black sedans rolling in and nervous shareholders milling around the front steps. For the first time in years, the C-suite was cornered with no one to sacrifice. By noon, the CEO was gone, removed by unanimous vote, escorted from the building not with applause, but under the heavy watch of investigators. That afternoon, the company released a formal statement. Words like deeply disturbed, betrayal of trust, and criminal investigation underway filled the page. Then came the real shock. Marcus turned himself in. The man who had smiled through my firing, who had claimed to be above suspicion, walked into a federal building and confessed. Not out of guilt. He thought cooperating would reduce his sentence. But it was enough. His statement named Ava, Melanie, the CFO, and 2 board members as part of the scheme. The fallout was instant. That evening, I received a message. No name. Just a location. A small cafe on the edge of the city. I knew who it was. Ava. She was already there when I arrived. Same posture. Same calm face. But something had changed. She looked like someone walking through a fire they hadn't expected to feel. She didn't speak right away. Neither did I. I didn't know they'd destroy you, she said finally. I kept my eyes on hers. But you helped them. I thought it was damage control. I thought you'd bounce back. I didn't respond. I didn't know about the memo. She slid a small envelope across the table. Inside were notes, handwritten copies of meetings, things she hadn't sent electronically, information I didn't have, names I hadn't connected yet. I was scared, she whispered. Still am. I leaned forward. You picked your side. And now you're trying to change jerseys at halftime. She flinched but didn't deny it. I want to make it right, she said. Whatever I can give you, it's yours. I took the envelope, stood, and looked down at her one last time. You don't get to make it right, but you can help finish it. And then I walked away. She didn't follow. She wouldn't need to. The last chapter had already started writing itself. The company didn't collapse all at once. It folded slowly, painfully, like a rusted machine grinding to its last breath. The brand, once praised for its innovation, became a corporate cautionary tale. Investigations multiplied. Lawsuits piled up. Clients vanished. Every attempt at a comeback was met with another leak, another revelation, another fracture in the foundation I'd carefully undermined. By the time the stock was officially delisted, nobody was surprised. What did surprise people, though, was how quickly Ironshore Solutions filled the vacuum. The firm I'd built under a false identity now stood as a rising competitor, scooping up the contracts and clients left behind. Clean code, fast delivery, exceptional results. All run through a network of proxies, silent partners, and overseas shells. No one knew who was really at the helm. That was by design. And I kept it that way. The CEO didn't disappear into the night. He was arrested at his lake house, dragged out in front of his family by agents in windbreaker. The photo of him being led away, sweaty, disheveled, handcuffed, circulated across every major outlet. It became a meme before the sun set. The others didn't fare much better. Marcus took a plea deal. Melanie resigned. Ava's name surfaced in documents but not in charges. Her cooperation likely saved her. Still, her career never recovered. She vanished from the industry, her once promising trajectory severed. One by one they fell. And then came the messages. People I hadn't heard from in months suddenly remembered I existed. Old co-workers emailed long apologies, full of regret and half-excuses. We didn't know. We thought you were guilty. We're so sorry. A few asked if I needed staff. Others offered to reconnect. One even left a voicemail that ended with, "No hard feelings, right?" I didn't answer any of them. Forgiveness wasn't part of the design. I moved through the world like smoke, unseen but impossible to ignore. I kept Ironshore's name clean, its books spotless. But beneath it I expanded, acquired tools, built systems, quietly positioned my people inside other firms, embedding seeds across the industry. The storm I'd started had done its job. Still, there was one thing left. I posted it from a new anonymous handle. Just text. No hashtags. No links. Just the final word in a long, silent conversation. You tried to bury me. You forgot. I'm the one who planted the seeds. It took 2 hours to go viral. I watched from a distance as people dissected it, debated it, tried to trace it back. They never did. But the right people saw it. And they knew. Not just who had written it, but why. This wasn't revenge for the sake of ego. It wasn't about power either. It was a lesson carved in code and fire, delivered with precision. Burn me once, and I'll walk away. Burn me twice, and I'll make sure there's nothing left to walk away from. Now the company was gone. Their empire dismantled. Their lies exposed. And I hadn't just survived. I'd rewritten the game. The elevator opened, and I stepped into the top floor of the building I now owned. It was quiet, clean, bright. The Ironshore logo stretched across the far wall in silver letters. I walked past rows of workstations, people nodding as I passed. Some knew who I was. Others just knew the company I built, reliable, fast, different from the rest. I reached my office and closed the door behind me. For the first time in a long while, I stood still. No noise. No chaos. Just the hum of something that finally felt solid. I looked around at the space. Nothing flashy, just a desk, a chair, and a shelf with a few untouched books. This wasn't about comfort. It was about control. Not the kind that comes with power, but the kind you take back after someone tries to rip it away. They did everything they could to bury me. Called me a criminal. Made sure no one would hire me. Watched while I was dragged out like trash. They thought I'd vanish. Instead, I built. No apologies. No big speech. Just a quiet truth. I'd won. There were still messages in my inbox, people from the past, asking if I had room for them now. Old co-workers who used to avoid eye contact in meetings. Some wrote long paragraphs. Others just asked if we could catch up. I ignored them all. This wasn't for them. I opened a blank email and typed one final message. You tried to bury me. You forgot. I'm the one who planted the seeds. Then I hit send. Not to anyone specific, just to the ones who needed to see it. I leaned back, folded my hands, and looked out the window. No applause. No cameras. Just the view of a city that once turned its back. Now it was mine. Do you think I went too far? Or did they deserve everything that happened to them after what they did to me? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your take. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video.